now. So welcome to our education session today on confidence, clarity and contraceptive choices. As I've said, please note that we are recording today's session. Your names, images, anything written in the chat box will not be visible in the recording. I have muted you all for today's session to avoid some background noise. And I said to a couple of people earlier, feel free to turn your camera off at any time. It is quite draining to have your camera on and be switched on for a whole webinar. So I totally understand if you want to turn your camera off, that's fine. As I've said, I encourage you to open up the chat box, which is in the bottom bar of your screen. Get involved in that throughout today's session to make it a little bit more interactive. But first, as many of you have already done, tell us your name, where you're from, so we can start to get to know each other. So today we'll be diving into all things contraception. In the chat box, it will actually be moderated by our team leader, Jen Farinella. So she'll be able to answer any questions that you have in the chat box and also post any helpful links that are relevant throughout today's session. Could you please pass me? Thank you. So most of you will hopefully have received your Caddyshack, either it's pink or white box. I can see some people reaching for it, which is great. If you haven't got it in front of you already and it's in the other room, take a moment now to run and grab it. We will be utilising a lot of the things in this box throughout today's session, so it would be good to have it close by. Okay, so as I said, we'll be diving into all things contraception today, but I would like to first start today's session by reading an acknowledgement of country that we wrote here in the Illawarra. We know that we have a lot of people from across the state in this session, so we're going to be reading an acknowledgement that's for us here in the Illawarra. So I'd like to acknowledge and pay my respect to the traditional owners of the land in which we meet. For us, where we are standing today, that's the Wadi Wadi people of the Darawal Nation. It is upon the ancestral lands that we meet. As we share our own knowledge, teaching and our learning in this space today, may we also pay respect to the knowledge embedded forever within the Aboriginal custodianship of country. I would like to pay my respect to the elders past and present, and I would like to extend my respect to any Aboriginal person who is present in this webinar today. So during today's session, I will be joined by my colleagues Naomi and Caitlin. We are all sexual health promotion officers in the HARP unit, and the HARP unit, if you're not aware, is the HIV and related programs unit. We're a health promotion team in the Illawarra Shoalhaven Local Health District. You may have heard of us on social media as a Caddyshack project. That's us as well, so definitely follow along with the Caddyshack project because it's us. So what we do, we promote a positive approach to sex, sexuality and sexual health. We reduce the incidence, or we aim to reduce the incidence of HIV, STIs and hepatitis in the 4 local government areas in the Illawarra Shoalhaven. And of course, we're guided by national, state and local health district strategies. Our work is varied. You can see on the screen today that a lot of the different work that we've done, a lot of the stuff that we're doing at the moment is online based. So it is nice to see some of the images up on the screen today. One of those things that we do are our annual training calendar. So today you're here joining in our webinar, which would usually be face-to-face, but today in the current climate, we're doing it online, and it's really been the greatest change for us, being able to reach people from across the state, and geography is no longer a barrier, so welcome. So we work with people who work with people. So we work with headspaces, IMS, Aboriginal medical services, doctors, nurses, teachers, multicultural services, universities, places like that. So just hit pause on this fact in your mind right now, and at the end of today's session, we'll be wrapping up with how we can help your service provide some ideas what you can progress with around sexual health. Oh, someone else is joining. So welcome to those who have joined. Please let us know who you are and where you're from in the chat box as we continue on. So before we get into the details of the contraceptive methods, this quote that I've got up on the screen here introduces the preventative innovations that have been made. And I think it's a really great way to start. A bit of a fun fact as well to get started, to show the journey and the history of contraception. Women in as early as 1850 BC actually practiced birth control by mixing crocodile dung and honey and place that in the vagina. So thankfully we've come a long way, and I'm not going to give you a history lesson on contraception today, although it is interesting. We will be moving forward and diving into the Family Planning New South Wales Contraceptive Kit. Today, for some of you, this may be a refresher, but I'd encourage you that we're always learning. I'm always learning, and this can just be another layer to add to your knowledge around contraception and protection. So I'll just move on to the next slide. So I really like this image as well. I thought it was appropriate to start the presentation with this image and just pause and really think about what it's saying. I'm going to read some statistics here, but I promise they're not boring. In Australia, more than 70% of all adult women and 95% of fertile women use a method of contraception. Oral contraceptive pills are used by 33.6% of women. Female sterilisation is actually the next common method with 22.5% of women. Condoms are around 21%, and a vasectomy is 19%. And I think that's really interesting to put into perspective today. Around 19% of Australian women who have ever had sex have used an emergency contraception. So we're going to talk about what emergency contraception means a bit later. 53% of emergency contraception users have used this method only once. So I've started mentioning alternative methods already, and the next slide is conveniently alternative contraception. So as there is a move towards living a plant-based or a vegan lifestyle and eco-awareness, natural fertility awareness management will likely become more popular, which requires no hormonal disruption and works with the rhythms of the body. By this, we mean more than simply the withdrawal or the pull-out method, which is where you withdraw before ejaculation. There are lots of fertility awareness apps and practitioners out there right now. So if you are interested in exploring alternative contraceptions a little bit more, you can jump online and check out some of those if that interests you or your clients. So other contraceptive methods I've got up on the screen here are things like the outer course option and potentially more permanent methods involving surgical procedures. So as I said, I'm not going to go into much depth in terms of alternative contraception today, but it is worth exploring these with your clients as possibilities to match their lifestyles. Importantly, to add to these methods, and we will be talking about this throughout today's session, they do not provide protection from sexually transmissible infections. So I think that's really important to remember. Looking into the future, we can see some exciting works happening around the male contraceptive pill coming on the market. And if you think about the previous slide that I had up with that image and the stats that we've shared, we know that a third of sexually active British men said that they would consider a hormonal contraception, such as the pill or the implant. And this is actually the same percentage of British women who currently use such medication. 8 out of 10 people in this study said contraception should be a shared responsibility. And I think that's really promising and a really great way to start today's conversation. I'm actually going to introduce my colleague Caitlin now, who will be taking us through hormonal contraception methods today, but I'll be popping back in throughout today's session. So I'll pass over to Caitlin now. Thanks, Caitlin.
Thanks, Maddie. Hi, everyone. It's all really exciting to be here today to talk to you all. So,
it started.
It often happens about.
Start that again.
So what I'm going to do before I get into talking about the hormonal methods, I thought it would be good to just show you a little bit on reproductive health and how ovulation occurs. Trust me, it's quite an interesting video. Well, I found it interesting. It doesn't go for too long. So we'll play that one now and then we'll get into it.
Ovulation is the release of an egg from one of the ovaries. It often happens about midway through the menstrual cycle, although the exact timing may vary. In preparation for ovulation, the lining of the uterus or endometrium thickens. The pituitary gland in the brain stimulates one of the ovaries to release an egg. The wall of the ovarian follicle ruptures at the surface of the ovary. The egg is released. Finger-like structures called membrane sweep the egg into the neighboring fallopian tube. The egg travels through the fallopian tube, propelled in part by contractions in the fallopian tube walls. Here in the fallopian tube, the egg may be fertilized by a sperm. If the egg is fertilized, the egg and sperm unite to form a one-celled entity called a zygote. As the zygote travels down the fallopian tube toward the uterus, it begins dividing rapidly to form a cluster of cells resembling a tiny raspberry. When the zygote reaches the uterus, it implants in the lining of the uterus, and pregnancy begins. If the egg isn't fertilized, it's simply reabsorbed by the body, perhaps before it even reaches the uterus. About 2 weeks later, the lining of the uterus sheds through the vagina. This is known as menstruation.
All right. Quite interesting. I think the human body is just incredible with what can be achieved. So I'm going to talk to you today about the hormonal methods. So with this slide, when we look at, say, protection, contraception and birth control, the main thing that I'm going to be talking to you is about the hormonal side of it. And the main aim is to prevent pregnancy from occurring.
I'm going to kick you out now. Back to me. I told you I'd be popping back in throughout today's session. I didn't give Caitlin very long to introduce herself, but I'm back. I thought that I'd just let you guys know that throughout today's session, we will be having case studies that pop up, and we will be using the poll function in the chat box for these activities. So just a bit of housekeeping. If you haven't already got your chat box open, it's the bar on the bottom that says chat, and there should be a poll button there as well. So I'll prompt you when it's time to open that poll. There's 2 polls on there. But first, I thought it would be good to have a little bit of a think and set the scene for these hormonal and barrier methods that Caitlin and Naomi will be talking about. But have a bit of a think about the clients that brought you here today. And keep them in mind during today's session. You might also be wearing 2 hats today, reflecting on your own personal experience and your own contraceptive journey, or that of a friend or family member. We are all connected and everyone has sexuality. So I think that's really important that we know that some things you might be learning for yourself or for somebody that you know, but maybe also for your clients. I'd also just like to mention to take a moment to remember that today when we're talking about contraception, we are talking about a person with a uterus. So you can see in that YouTube video that Caitlin showed, kind of talks about the anatomy of the reproductive organs of the body. So we're talking about a person with a uterus. That might include a woman, that might include the transgender community, intersex, gender diverse, non-binary people. And however people identify, if they have a uterus, then we can be having this conversation around contraception. I think it's important that we identify our own assumptions and biases around that, and remember when we're talking about contraception to use inclusive language. Things like using the correct pronouns is a really good way to start. So I will be popping back in and kicking Caitlin and Naomi off the microphone throughout today's session with a couple of case studies, just to keep it a bit more interactive, so it's not just us standing here talking to you guys all the time. But I will hand back over to Caitlin now. I'll let her jump on the microphone. Thanks, Caitlin.
Back again. So I love questions, so please feel free if you want to ask things today. There's no such thing as a silly question, and if I don't know it, by all means, I'm not an expert, so if I don't know it, I will find out, but I'm here to help. So yeah, please feel free to pop them in the chat box and I'll answer them as we go along. All right, so we'll jump into it. So the oral contraceptive pill, Maddie talked about this briefly in the previous slides. So it is the most common we have seen, and probably the most talked about in society these days. So what it is, it's a hormonal based method, and there's two hormones. So there's the estrogen and the progesterone. And the way it works is the estrogen and progesterone stops the egg of the ovaries being released, and it also creates a mucus in the cervix, so it stops the sperm from being able to reach into the uterus. So there's 28 pills. So 21 of them are active, they have the hormones in them, and then there's 7 that are inactive, or called like the sugar pills. So during those 7 inactive pills, what will happen is a withdrawal bleed. So we don't call it a period, we call it a withdrawal bleed, where there's no hormones within the body. There are lots of advantages with the oral contraceptive pill. It is highly effective, so you can see on the right hand side the effectiveness. So we've put 93%. So the reason we've put 93, it is up to 99.5% effective in perfect use, but we always go off typical use, because if you look at human error, which I'm going to explain a little bit later, it drops it down to about 93. So highly effective. The reasons for that drops down, it needs to be taken, we say at the same time every day, but within a 12-hour period, that's okay. If a pill is missed, it can potentially decrease the effectiveness. If a woman vomits within 2 to 3 hours after taking the oral contraceptive pill, it may not be as active. And if the woman has severe diarrhea, or some medications can also counteract that pill working. So some epileptic medication might affect it, and herbal teas, so St. John's wort, can also affect the absorption of the pill. Some disadvantages, some women may cause bloating, or can increase mood changes. So we always say for any hormonal method, any contraception, it's really, really important to give it about 4 months, because it's an external hormone coming into the body, and it does take some time for your body to either work well with a hormone or not work well. So it's really important to have that good relationship with either the woman's health nurse or the GP to say, oh, maybe this contraception is working, maybe not, but we say give it around 4 months for it to work. With this one as well, fertility goes back to normal pretty much straight away, so you don't have to think about the body's really good at saying, okay, there's no hormones in my body now, can pretty much go back to normal fertility. Any questions on the oral contraceptive pill before I move on? In the chat box, just pop it in there if there is any. All right, so the next one we're going to go on to, just quickly on the oral contraceptive, they range from around $2.50 to a month, $2.50 to about $25. So that just different hormones, different sorts. So yeah, $2.50 to $25 a month. The next one is the mini pill. So with this one, the reason they call it the mini pill, it only has one hormone in it. It doesn't have the estrogen. It only has the progesterone in the mini pill. So the progesterone, what it does, it increases the mucus within the cervix. So it stops the sperm from reaching the uterus. This one, really important, it needs to be taken within a 3-hour window. So it is the same amount of effectiveness as the combination contraceptive pill, 93%. But if it's not taken within that 3-hour window every single day, then it's not going to be effective. And other methods need to be used, such as condoms or the emergency contraceptive pill. But I will be talking about that later. This one, good news, it can be used during breastfeeding. So the combination pill can't be used during breastfeeding, but the mini pill or the progesterone only pill can be used whilst breastfeeding. And it's less hormones. So if someone, for instance, some people don't really work well with the estrogen in their body, so they might want to try the progesterone because there's less hormones in the body, less side effects. Yeah, please feel free if you do have any questions to pop them in the box. And they start from about $5 a month. So the next one is the Diaphragm. I think we've missed one. Yep. So the Diaphragm. So this one is technically a non-hormonal.
Sorry. Here we go.
So the diaphragm is technically a non-hormonal method, but the reason I put it in there is people use spermicide with it. So I will explain the diaphragm and then I'll explain the spermicide. So the diaphragm isn't as effective as other methods. So it's about 86 in perfect use, but we go to around 82% in real life when we look at, say, human error, or if it hasn't been put in properly, it's out of date. So these last for 2 years, but it needs to be placed inside the vagina and it needs to stay there for 6 hours after sex. The reason for that is sperm can stay alive for quite some time. If you take it out before, it can potentially cause an unplanned pregnancy. I forgot to mention before as well, none of these will protect against STIs. So if it's a new partner, really important to making sure you don't know their STI status to use condoms. So these aren't going to protect against STIs. With the spermicide, so the diaphragm lasts for up to, I think it's 5 years, it's either 2 or 5. So they are a long time, as long as you look after it. So you've got to wash the diaphragm with warm water and preferably with no soap. So you don't want it to deteriorate, and you leave it in the sun, it can deteriorate as well. So some people like to use this as a more natural method, but they do recommend using the spermicide as well. And the spermicide is roughly around $30 per tube, but you can only use that for up to 3 months, then you've got to chuck it out and get it again. So this one, the diaphragm, is quite cost effective because it's $99 and you can keep it for a long time. It's the spermicide that can potentially be more expensive. All right, so when we look at the Implanon, so the Implanon is a flexible rod. It's really tiny. It's the size of a matchstick, so quite small. And it's placed underneath the bicep. So predominantly they put it in the non-dominant arm. So whatever arm you write with, it's the opposite. And what that one does, it slowly releases 2 hormones. So it works similar to the way the pill works. It stops the ovaries from releasing an egg, and it also increases the mucus in the cervix to stop the sperm from reaching the uterus. This one is highly effective, so it's 99.95%, so it's probably one of the highest ones. And we call this a set and forget type of contraception. So it's placed underneath the arm and it's left there for 3 years. People don't need to worry about it, and it just stays there. So fertility will return pretty much back to normal as soon as it's taken out. So that's one of the advantages. Some medications also do counteract it. So like I was saying with the oral contraceptive pill, some of your herbal medication, herbal teas and epilepsy medications may also reduce the effectiveness. There are some disadvantages with this one. For instance, a woman may spot bleed or they may not bleed at all. So a period might stop completely. That's why it's really important to give it about 4 months, like I say with any of these hormonal methods. Very cost effective. So it's $7 if you're on a healthcare card. So the pharmaceutical benefits scheme have it under there, and it's $72 if you're not on a healthcare card. So really cost effective for 3 years. Do we have any questions at all? Right? No? All right, the next one is the hormonal IUD. So the hormonal IUD is a plastic T-shaped device, and it's inserted into the womb. So this is a medical procedure, and not all doctors or women's health nurse can do it. They have to be specifically trained to be able to insert the hormonal IUD. So if you're thinking about getting that one done, making sure you talk to your local doctor to see if they're qualified in doing that. And it's a little procedure. So this one can be used up to 5 years. It's a set and forget, like we said before. They don't really recommend this for younger people. There are a few reasons why they don't recommend it for younger people. If you can see in the picture up the top, the strings that are attached, they stay there throughout the 5 years to help with removal. But we call them a stairway to heaven for infections. So if people are having, for instance, multiple partners, they're not using protection, it can be a cause for a way for infections to definitely occur. And also the uterus hasn't had a child before, so that can potentially be another factor why they don't recommend that for young people. And what it does, it stops the fertilization of the egg, and it also thickens the mucus. So very similar to the contraceptive pill, and it also makes it non-viable for a pregnancy to occur. Highly effective, so 99.9%. So this is the highest effective one, and also cost effective too. If you look at it over the 5-year period, it's $185 plus the insertion fee if you aren't on a healthcare card. If you're on a healthcare card, it's $7. So really cost effective. So the next one's the copper IUD. So this one is technically not a hormonal method either, but we decided to put it in slide after the Mirena. The reason for that, so what it is, it's a T-shape exactly like the Mirena, but what it does, it's got copper wire. So the copper wire is down the center and also the 2 sides. And what that does, the copper makes it not viable for a pregnancy to occur because that copper radiates, and it also stops the sperm and the egg from fertilizing. This one potentially has a lot of benefits for people that can't take any hormonal methods, so they don't work well with the estrogen or progesterone. This could be an alternative method. This one can also be used as an emergency contraception as well, and these last for 5 to 10 years. So very similar to the Mirena, it can it needs to be inserted by a health professional that has been trained. So not all doctors can do this procedure. And it's not on the PBS either, so it can be quite cost effective as well. So that's another thing to consider when you may be talking to your clients about this. So the depot injection. The depot injection is an injection either in the arm or the buttocks, and this one is injected into the body every 12 weeks. So what this does, it stops the ovaries from releasing an egg, and it also makes the mucus thicker in the cervix. So very similar to all the ones that I've been talking about as well. With this one, they may not recommend it for younger people. There are some disadvantages with this one. It can take up to 18 months for fertility to return back to normal, and it can decrease bone density. There's only slight bone density, but that's why they may not recommend it to young people, because of the fertility and also the bone density. Advantages to this, it's another kind of set and forget. It's taken every 12 weeks, so every 3 months. But when we look at, say, human error, if people don't take it within that 3-month period, they don't go back to their doctor to get the updated injection, then the effectiveness will decrease. So you can see on the screen the effectiveness, but if it's not taken every 3 months, then it will decrease. The next one is the vaginal ring, very similar to the combination pill. So this one is inserted into the vagina. The person doesn't have to have a health professional, they can do it on their own. So the ring sits on top of the cervix, and what it does, it slowly releases the 2 hormones to stop the release of the egg, and also thickens of the mucus. And same effectiveness as the oral contraceptive pill, 93%. So this one stays in place for 3 weeks, and then it's taken out for a week for a withdrawal bleed. So during that week, there will be no hormones in the body, and then that's when the person will withdraw bleed. So these ones, you do need a script, so you do need to go to the doctor to get them, and they'll be very similar to the oral contraceptive pill. They'll probably give you about 4 months in one packet, and then you'll go back. But the scripts, depending on how long you've seen the GP, they know your history, they could give you a script for up to 12 months. All right, so the emergency contraceptive pill, this one's a really important one to remember. So this one is taken in case of an emergency. So that's why it's called the emergency contraceptive. It's also known as, a lot of people know as the morning after pill. The reason they don't call it that is because, you know, people have sex at any time of the day, not just, you know, in the night time, and they need it in the morning. So it's called the emergency contraceptive pill. And what this hormone does, it stops the release of an egg. So for instance, if someone has forgotten the combination pill and they've had unprotected sex, or a condom has broken maybe, or they've completely forgot to use any contraception, the emergency contraceptive pill can be used. So it can be used up to 3 days after unprotected sex. But when we look at that, it's most effectively taken within the first 12 hours after unprotected sex. So when we get to day 3, it is way less effective compared to within that first 12 hours. And they recommend using it as an emergency. So if, for instance, you're speaking to your clients and they're using this quite a lot, really important to maybe talk to them about other methods of what I've talked about before. It might be best for them. And one size doesn't fit all. Like I keep saying throughout, it's really important to know all the different methods. So when we're looking at the contraceptive, the like hormonal, non-hormonal, what might work for one person may not work for another person. So it's really important to be across all of them, and speaking to your clients as well. If one doesn't work, that's okay. There's plenty more to try. So what I've done in this graph, if you look at the typical use versus perfect use. So when we were explaining typical use, we're looking at the human error side of things. So for instance, the injection, if it's not taken within the 12-week period, other medications are taken, it comes down to about 96%. In perfect use, it's 99.8. Same with the combination pill. If it's not taken within that 12-hour period, it will drop down to 93. If other medications are used, it could potentially drop down as well. Are there any questions on this slide?
So there's a couple of questions that have come through.
Cool.
Jen's answered a couple of them. So Paula's asked, is it okay to miss sugar pills? So no period?
Yep, thanks for bringing that up, Paula. So yes, it is okay to miss the sugar pill. So what will happen, it will just go straight back into the hormonal methods. Don't recommend to do it all the time though. So if you're missing like more than say 3 months in the sugar pills, there's a couple of reasons for that. It's good to give your body a bit of a break from the hormones. And for instance, you may not know that you're pregnant if you keep skipping the pill. But yes, you can skip the sugar pills.
So we have another question asking, the diaphragm needs to stay inside for 6 hours. Does that mean the sperm dies after 6 hours in the vagina? Or how does that work?
Good question. So the sperm can stay alive for up to around 3 to 5 days after, like if it's occurred, but if no hormonal methods. But what they do, it cups and it dies. So the reason it needs to stay in there for 6 hours is because it cups inside the diaphragm, and it will die inside the diaphragm because it's not like a viable place for the pregnancy. So it will die, but it needs to be in there for 6 hours.
We have another question asking, is there a minimum age for the Implanon?
Oh, good question. Well, the age of consent for sex is 16, but you can make your own medical decisions at 14. So that one I'm not 100% sure of. I would recommend speaking to a doctor. Bit of a grey area. Sorry, I can't answer that one. But having a chat with a doctor, they'd be able to know the ins and outs of that.
There's a question around the Implanon and the IUD around weight gain and changes.
Oh, really good questions.
Yep.
So we get this all the time. If you think about an external hormone coming into the body, you are going to see some changes, but after about 4 months it should settle down. But most of that is just water weight. But no, there shouldn't be too many weight gains. It all depends on the person. So each person will react different to the hormones. The one that they do say can potentially cause some weight gain is the DMPA injection, but you know, some people it works really well for, they don't see any side effects, and other people it just doesn't work. But you do have to remember it's 4 months, give it 4 months, and then it's an external hormone coming into the body. So you will see some slight changes.
Speaking of side effects and benefits, we have a question about the Mirena for older women and what the side effects and benefits are for older women. But I see that Jen's put a link in there as well.
About the Mirena. Yeah, so advantages, it's cost effective, it's a set and forget, so it's in there for 5 to 10 years. So the Mirena is used by a lot of people that, for instance, have maybe had all their children or they don't want to have children. They place the Mirena in, and then they don't have to think about it anymore, or they're in long-term monogamous relationships, so they don't have to be thinking about protection from STIs. So there's some really big advantages for that.
Around the emergency contraceptive pill, what's the problem with using that regularly?
A few things. It's quite expensive, so because it's not on the PBS, pharmacies can charge whatever they like for it. They're around $25 for one. but it's not as effective as the other methods either. So, for instance, if it's taken 3 days after unprotected sex, it can be way less effective. So if the egg has already been released from the ovaries, pregnancy will still occur. So I hope that's helped. So maybe trying different methods.
The last question we have in the chat box is, if someone is on a 22-day cycle, could a vaginal ring be a good hormone-free way to control this and regular bleeding? What else would you suggest?
Good question. So to be honest, I would probably, out of aspect, probably just go into family planning. They have a really good talk line. So because we're promoting the family planning products today, they've got nurses on the other line, and they're available Monday to Friday, 8:30 till 5, and they're really helpful. So if you have questions on that, I'd highly recommend giving them a call. They're so lovely on the other line, and they'll be able to help with you. But also creating a really good relationship with a doctor that will be able to know the ins and outs of the body.
Thank you. That question was mine, about from a young woman that I'd spoken to, and I have referred her to family planning for for a discussion. She's had hormonal interventions before, and they've been really poor for her mental health. She's had Implanons and Marinas and lots of different things, and I think she's just looking for other opportunities. So if someone could just post that phone number, maybe that would be a way for her to touch base without then having to go in, because I think she's got some issues around making face-to-face contacts. I think she's a bit apprehensive because she's had negative experiences.
Definitely. So the number is in the chat box, but I can give it to you now. It's have you got a pen and a bit of paper?
Yeah.
So it's 1300 658 886.
Ripper, thank you.
And they're really helpful. They're lovely, really easy to talk to. So recommend that.
Thanks, guys.
There's just a note in there from family planning around an email option might be really good too.
As well.
They might be able to answer a bit quicker rather than the phone.
So I can give you the email as well. Do you want the email address? So it's talkline@fpnsw.org.au. All right, thanks everyone. I hope you learned something today, and thanks for having me. See ya.
I'm back. I told you I was going to be popping back in, and now is my time. And it's great that we had that question around a client, because we are going to be doing some case studies, so hopefully they'll be helpful to you. So we've come to our first case study, and it's Jalen's story. So Jalen is in a stable relationship and uses condoms regularly. However, recently a condom broke during sex. Jalen has a uterus and is wondering about whether using a backup form of contraception might work as an option for them, and whether they should stop using condoms altogether because of this. Jalen is good with routines and has a part-time job, so expense is not a concern. So now's the time, if you can hopefully see the poll at the bottom of your screen where it says poll, click on that arrow and it should say Jalen's story. I'm seeing some shakes of heads. Has anyone seen it? If not, let me have a little look and see if I can be clever and launch polling. Here we go. That'd help, won't it? What about now? Good. Thanks for the thumbs up. So jump on the poll now. Just remember there's no wrong answer here. So I'll give you a minute to have a look at that. You can select multiple options, and that's a really good point when you're talking about contraception with your clients. As Caitlin says, not one size fits all. So there's some great questions coming through this chat. So I have actually got a whole list of things that we don't know about Jalen. We don't know their age. We don't know their background. We don't know if they've been pregnant or if they've had an abortion. We don't know if the stable relationship means, is it an open relationship? We're not sure. We don't know if they're on any other medication. We don't know their medical history. And we can start by having those conversations with Jalen and kind of building a bit more of a picture rather than going off this one story that we have and then recommending something straight away. So we can also start by asking whether they have both had an STI test recently. Do they know their sexual health status before we take away barrier methods? We also note that Jalen is really good with routines and isn't concerned about extent. So maybe if we go back to the beginning of this presentation when I was talking about alternative methods, maybe an alternative method would work for Jalen, something like a paid ovulation tracker app, you know, something that's out there that's an alternative method. We can start by having these conversations with Jalen and discuss these contraception options with them so that they can make an informed choice to match their lifestyle. So if you have any other thoughts about Jalen, pop it in the chat box. I'm not sure whether on my end I can see the responses from the poll. Let's have a look.
Oh, yes, you can.
Yes, I can. So I can see the contraceptive pill was 84%, 85%, 86%. It's going up. Mini pill, diaphragm, Implanon, hormonal IUD was mentioned. It's quite high. I can see the internal condom flickering around at about 28% of people. So it's quite varied. And I think that's a really great representation of those conversations that you can have with Jalen and their partner around contraception options. So if you haven't had a chance to do the poll, now's your last chance before I close it. And if you guys are interested, I can share those results around with you later on. So I'm going to end poll now. Yeah. So at 89% of you guys said oral contraceptive pill. And I can see someone saying I would change my response depending on how they feel about unplanned pregnancy. Yeah, really great point. I'll share these results. I wonder what happens if I click this button. Can you guys see those responses now? Yep. Yeah, great. Awesome, thank you. Okay, so I will come back in again later on with another story, another case study, and keeping in mind those clients, as you mentioned, Astrid, around people that you know that you can be having these conversations with. But I am going to pass over to Naomi, and she's going to be going through some barrier methods now. Thanks, Nobes.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And it's so good to see so many people from around the state being online with us. And yay to the sunshine. I'm not sure about up the North Coast, but I think you copped a fair battering, and we've certainly copped more than our fair share down the South Coast. So thanks for being online with us today. This morning, I'm going to run you through the protection side of contraception. So when we're talking about protection, we are generally talking about barrier methods, and we are talking about protection that's going to help stop little things like these. This is my friend chlamydia. Yay! So when we talk about protection, we're talking about things that are not going to only prevent an unplanned pregnancy from occurring, but also stop those sexual fluids coming in contact with each other and potentially leading to a sexually transmissible infection. So just to take us back to the difference between protection and contraception, contraception is what Caitlin's basically just spoken you through, having a look at more of those hormonal methods to stop an unplanned pregnancy. Protection is a device that can be used during sex to prevent both an unplanned pregnancy and the transmission of those sexually transmitted infections. Oh, we've got a comment about the toy. Hi,
Way too cute.
We've got a whole heap. We love these little guys. Look, they're our friends. This is my favourite because check out the eyelashes on this one. This is kissing disease.
Got a little crab.
They're fun. But what I will do before we move into discussing the forms of protection, now is a really good time to get your pack or your box that you were sent out and most of you will have the banana penis in there, you will have the O cube, and you will also have, thanks Tracy, you could be like my little sidekick, little show girl. You will also see in there the external and internal condoms. So I encourage you to get those out if you have them. If you don't have the O cube or the banana and you've got a cucumber or something close by, feel free to grab it. The reason I'm suggesting that you follow along with me and do each of these steps at the same time is so that you yourself have had experience in how to put a condom on or in correctly, and then you're going to be able to better discuss or demonstrate that process with the clients who you're working with as well. So we know, particularly when we speak with young people are aware of condoms, they're aware of the benefits, they're aware of the fact that they can pick them up quite cheaply and they're readily available. We just assume as workers that young people actually know what to do with those condoms once they get them. Unfortunately, not everybody knows how to put on a condom correctly. That's when it's then more likely to break or to come off during intercourse, and then won't provide the protection, obviously, against an unplanned pregnancy or sexually transmitted infection. So being able to understand how we use these correctly is really important. So please follow along with me. The first one we're going to have a look at is the male or external condom. Why do we say external? It just becomes part of the language that we use now. It's sex positive, and it's also very inclusive of diverse genders and sexualities. So not just to be referring to it as the male condom, but also as an external condom. It's a thin, soft material that's often latex. You can, however, get latex-free condoms because some people do experience a latex allergy. Fortunately, these days you can get the latex-free condoms in the condom aisle at most supermarkets and pharmacies. They do just cost a little bit more than a regular latex one. They are a sheath that's opened at one end and closed at the other, which is designed to catch those sexual fluids. And as I said before, it's considered a barrier method. So it's stopping sperm coming into contact with the egg by blocking it off and not making it able to reach the uterus for fertilization of that egg. So as I said, these condoms are quite readily available. Most supermarkets and chemists have them. We also have a number of places within the Illawarra and Shoalhaven, as you two will, wherever you are located, have them available free of charge. So things like women's health centres, sexual health clinics, Aboriginal medical services, youth centres, etc. A lot of them provide condoms free of charge. The great thing is that they can be used with other types of contraception. So as Caitlin and Maddie have both mentioned already, if somebody with a uterus is using a form of hormonal contraception, but they're in a relationship that may be quite new or an open relationship, condoms can still be used to protect against those sexually transmissible infections that those other contraceptions are not going to protect against. The fun thing about condoms is they come in lots of different shapes, colours and flavours. For giggles, if you're really bored one afternoon, I recommend you jump on YouTube and check out condom taste testing. It's American, but it's quite funny watching young people taste test the different flavoured condoms that are out there. The reason that condoms became flavoured was to increase their use when it came to oral sex. The vagina and anus do not have taste buds. The mouth, however, does. So it was designed, I can see Tracy just like, so they were designed specifically around sex workers and to increase sex workers' use of condoms with oral sex. But now they've become more popular, and who doesn't love a purple penis as opposed to a skin-toned one? As I said, they can be used for vaginal, anal, or oral sex, and we can also use condoms on sex toys, and they are going to prevent an unplanned pregnancy as well as a sexually transmissible infection, stopping those sexual fluids from coming in contact with each other. Relatively cheap as well. They usually come in a packet of 6 to 12, but they cost about 50 cents per condom, and they are obviously single use. So let's move into the demonstration and how we go about using one of these. The first thing that we want to speak with our clients about is sexual consent. Sexual consent is particularly important, and it isn't something that should just be discussed at the beginning of the sexual act. We want to talk to our client about having those conversations about consent throughout the sexual act or the sexual behaviour, not just at the beginning, but the beginning is a very good place to start. So why is consent important? all sexual acts should be performed between two consenting partners. Sexual acts obviously can be performed with just yourself, one person. However, once a second or potentially even third, fourth, fifth person becomes involved in that act, we need to be making sure that we're getting sexual consent from all parties involved. For a long time, consent education has been based around no means no. And whilst that absolutely does, if somebody says no or stop, they mean no or stop, and the partner should stop. What we do recognise, however, is there are a lot of ways that somebody can mean no without actually saying the word no. An example of that is body language. So if somebody is in a corner like this saying yes, their body language is by no means giving us a yes. So instead of the no is no, we have moved towards a yes is yes, in the sense that we want partners to be able to check in and ask questions such as, do you feel comfortable? Do you feel safe? Are you okay for me to proceed? If they are getting yes responses to those types of questions, they are getting consent. We have had people say that they can be a difficult conversation to have. But again, this is where you can take on a role, particularly as a worker, where you can work with your client and go through what we call some scripting. Do some practice with your clients around how to ask those questions. The more they ask those questions, the more it does become a script, and the more comfortable it will feel to ask those questions when they do find themselves in a sexual situation. We also say, particularly to young people who say to us that those questions might be difficult to ask, or that that's a difficult conversation to have, we accept that and we acknowledge that. However, it's also a very difficult conversation to have if you find yourself in a court being accused of unwanted sexual contact or rape. So they're the kinds of things that we're talking to people about. When we get consent and we're getting yeses, we're talking about freely given, somebody's not feeling forced, pressured or coerced into making that decision, that it is given so freely, and that it's an enthusiastic yes. So yes, not just a oh yes, because again, that's not giving consent. Can I provide any of the scripts to start this conversation? So yes, very much. We talk about consent, not just in the sexual sense either. You can start a conversation with your client in talking about situations where they might have to give consent on a day-to-day basis. Whenever you have to sign a document, you're giving consent to somebody or someone to do something on your behalf. So you can have a discussion around that. Same too when it comes to sexual consent. Okay, what does sexual consent look like? How do we give consent? How do we know that we have consent from a partner? There is a really great resource that's available through PlaySafe Pro, and Maddie will talk about PlaySafe Pro towards the end. But there's a tool called Talking About Sexual Health, and that has some great tips on how you can start conversations with clients around sexual health and looking at sexual consent. There's lots of great resources online around that. But I do want to move forward, otherwise we're going to run completely out of time for these demonstrations. So the first thing that we want to do is get consent. Once we have got consent from both consenting parties, we need to get the condom ready. First of all, we're going to check the expiry date. Condoms are considered a medical product and they do have an expiry date, which is approximately 5 years from the date of manufacture. So they do have a fairly long shelf life. There are, however, a few things that can impact on that shelf life. So even if a condom is in date, if that condom has been stored, say, in a wallet, in a back pocket, it's experienced heat and friction, it's likely that that condom is perished or is going to break when it's being used. So for people who are carrying condoms around in wallets or they're keeping them stored in glove boxes of cars, we give them a really big high five and say, well done for being prepared. We just encourage them to change those condoms about every 6 months to make sure that they're not going to be perished or damaged when it comes time to use them. So checking the expiry date, it is usually quite small, but it's on the back of every condom packet. Once we've checked the expiry date and make sure that it is in date, we need to then remove the condom from the packet. We have to open it carefully. Most condoms come in a square-shaped package and 2 of those edges will be serrated. You can see there from the demonstration, thankfully, because it is a clear back. We just suggest pushing the condom towards the center slightly. Then you've got a really nice corner to be able to tear. During this opening stage, we need to be careful that we're not damaging the condom. So we don't want people to be opening it with their teeth. And also for people who have quite long nails or acrylic nails, we want to make sure that there's no possibility of breaking the condom at this stage by putting a fingernail through it. So open it carefully. The condom will then come out and we remove it from the packet. Once we've removed that condom, we need to make sure that the condom is around the right way before we go to unroll it. We say that it sits up and looks like a really cute little Mexican hat. If you have the condoms in front of you, feel free to take it out and to see what it is that I'm talking about. While I'm on that point about taking it out, feeling it and seeing what it's all about, it's a really good idea to encourage the clients who you're working with to do the same. You don't want somebody's first experience of a condom being the first time that they need it in a sexual situation. We often get sent to saying, oh, we don't want to have condoms because the young people just take them out of the dispensers and blow them up and use them as water balloons. We say that's fantastic. We call that condom literacy. They get a sense of what a condom looks like, feels like, smells like, and maybe even tastes like. So the more they become frequent with practicing that condom use, the better they're going to be when they actually need it. So we encourage people even to use condoms for masturbation, so they also get used to what the feel of that condom is on or in their genitals as well. So back to having that Mexican looking hat, it is only going to correctly unroll one way. If we were to place that condom onto the tip of the penis or sex toy and realize that it was not going to unroll the correct way, we shouldn't just flip it around and reuse it. An erect penis will have pre-cum at the tip of it, which could potentially contain sperm leading to an unplanned pregnancy. More likely, though, going to contain bacteria, which can lead to a sexually transmissible infection such as chlamydia or gonorrhea. So another reason why people should carry more than one condom on them at a time, not necessarily because they're being promiscuous, but because accidents and mistakes do happen. So always good to have more than one, so you've got a backup. Once we check that that's going to unroll the correct way, we need to squeeze the air from the tip of that condom before placing it on the penis or the toy. The reason we do that is so that we are giving somewhere for the ejaculation, or as I like to say, the little swimmers, to go at the end. If we don't remove that air bubble, the condom is more likely to break during use, and you are more likely to have the ejaculation and therefore the semen shoot back out the other end, which again is not going to be protecting against an unplanned pregnancy. So making sure that we remove that air bubble before then placing it onto the tip of the penis or the toy. Whilst we hold it in place at the top, we're then going to slide the condom on the toy or the penis, and we're going to roll it down the entire length. Why would we not just leave it in the middle? We don't want it to fall off. So if we only unroll it to halfway, it's more likely to fall off during intercourse. We also want to unroll it the entire length of the penis so that we're getting more protection in that skin or genital area. It's just providing greater protection against some of the skin-to-skin infections, such as herpes or genital warts. So unrolling it all the way to the very end. All condoms in Australia come pre-lubricated, so they will have an amount of lube. I can see that Tracy's done hers, she's cleaning her hands. That's always the messiest part of our job, is the clean-up bit afterwards. Thanks, Tracy. Show that up again. Show us the banana. Show us your job.
Well done.
Excellent. Oh, blue one, so pretty. So we recommend the additional use of a water-based lubricant. This is for a few reasons. A, it's going to reduce the amount of friction, therefore making the condom less likely to break. But less friction also means that it's more likely to be increased pleasure for both parties involved as well. It has to be water-based. We don't want it to be an oil-based or a food-based, because that can deteriorate the rubber that those condoms are made out of. So that's why we say water-based. Then sexy times will occur, whether that be penetrative, whether it be oral, vaginal, anal, whatever it might be that's fun for those couple. Once sexy time has occurred, and assuming ejaculation has occurred also, we need to remove the penis or toy. We want to make sure that you hold on to the base of the condom whilst that toy or penis is being withdrawn. Particularly with a penis, once ejaculation has occurred, the penis will go soft or flaccid. So we want to make sure that when the penis is being withdrawn, the condom is also coming with it. We have had cases of people presenting to emergency department because they have had a condom stuck inside of their vagina. It is like a tampon. It can't actually go anywhere. If they had a fish around, they would be able to get it out themselves. However, some people don't feel comfortable doing that, and that's fine. It's also now not going to protect against an unplanned pregnancy or sexually transmissible infection. So further actions such as emergency contraceptions and sexual health testing needs to then take place. Once that has happened, we've taken it out, we need to very carefully remove it and tie a knot in it. At this stage, we want to tie a knot into the condom so that those sexual fluids stay inside. If any of those sexual fluids were to, say, get on our hands and we were then to touch ourselves or touch our partner, there is still a chance, a very, very unlikely chance of an unplanned pregnancy, but there is a chance of spreading that bacteria that may be in there, therefore leading to a sexually transmissible infection. So we tie a knot just to keep those sexual fluids in a safe place. Once that's happened, we want to put it in the bin, dispose of the condoms in an appropriate way, usually placing it into the wrapper that it initially came out of. People usually have tissues or some type of paper towel near them. You can wrap it up and put it in the bin. We don't recommend people flushing it down the toilet. Toilets get blocked with condoms and use sanitary products. It's quite embarrassing when the plumber has to come and unblock the toilet and says the reason why that's happened is because it's full of used condoms. We also, most of us online live in coastal communities with beautiful beaches, and we don't want those used condoms being washed down the drains and ending up out in the surf and being eaten by turtles and seals. So be responsible and put them into the bin. So that was the male or external. If you're playing along at home, now is a good time to get out your O-Cube. If you don't have an O-Cube, you can just use the inside of your hand and very much practice a similar thing. Maddie, my little assistant to the right there, is Wheel of Fortune style. So again, just looking at sex positive and inclusive language, these are commonly referred to as female condoms, but we more frequently refer to them as internal condoms. They are a thin nitrile pouch. So the thing to note here is that it is not a latex material. It's made of nitrile. Therefore, if particularly the female has a latex allergy, this is a really good alternative to external condoms. It's placed in the vagina before sex, and that's another really good feature. So similar to the diaphragm that Caitlin discussed before, this can be inserted before sex. They're really big in the UK, and we know of women who actually insert them before they go out for the night, so that if something were to happen later on in the evening, such as intoxication and not being as prepared in terms of their protection, it's already in place and they're ready to go. It's approximately 17 centimeters in length, and it has 2 flexible rings, one at each end, which we will see closer as we go through the demonstration. So like the external condom, obviously free from hormones, it's a one size fits all. I did forget to say when it came to the external condoms that they do come in sizes. So there is what they call a petite. They don't call it small. They call it petite. There is a regular, and then there is a large size condom. For most people, a regular size condom is going to be fine. We've done activities where we've fit over 28 oranges into a condom without it breaking. So those things stretch and have a lot of give. I think it's more for people's ego, shall we say, when it comes to sizes. But when it comes to the internal condom, it just is one size, and one size will fits all. The good thing about this, and why it's become really big in other countries and we're seeing it become a lot more popular here in Australia as well, is that it is providing those females with a little bit more choice around contraception, and particularly around protection against sexually transmissible infections. So whilst most of those hormonal contraceptions, well, in fact, all of them at the moment are female-based, this gives females a way to be able to control not just the birth control and preventing an unplanned pregnancy, but also control over sexually transmissible infections. We've got a comment or question coming in there from Doreen. We always get asked how women can pee if they're already wearing a female or internal condom. A little reminder of anatomy to clear the confusion. So this is an interesting point, and it's a really good one. So it's the same as how a woman would urinate if she had a tampon in place. The urethra is a very separate little hole near the clitoris. It is different to the vagina. So you can still urinate freely whilst that condom is in place. Can be inserted before intercourse, as we've mentioned. It doesn't need to be fitted by a doctor. As I said, we're through promotion making these more popular in Australia. Unfortunately, you're not just going to walk into a supermarket or any pharmacy and find these at the moment. Your best chance of getting them is to order them through us as part of our resource order form, or to be purchasing them online. We can, however, say from our team that we've probably seen about a 400% increase in the amount of female condoms or internal condoms that we distributed from, say, 2018 to 2019. And we're seeing an even bigger increase this year. Family Planning have done some research study on this in the last 12 months as well. And I do believe that those research papers are about to come out. So it's like, I guess, tampons were back in the day. The more women are going into pharmacies and shops and asking for them, or asking the pharmacist to order them in for them, the more popular that they will become. And Doreen has just reminded us that we say most female bodies have 3 holes down there. Some people don't know this. We had a male colleague who we used to work with that didn't know that. So the 3 holes that Doreen are referring to is the anus, the vagina, and then the urethral canal that comes out just near the clitoris. And the clitoris is important for people to know, particularly when it comes to sexual pleasure. So as with the external condom, it's really important that when the internal condom is being used and a sexual act is about to take place, that we're getting consent from both parties, or all parties involved in that act. Similarly to the external condom, it is considered a medical product, and so therefore it does have an expiry date, a slightly smaller shelf life on the internal condom, but usually still a good few years from purchase to expiry. Again, you need to open the packet carefully. We recommend that you push the condom down into the middle of the packet. It does have a serrated edge, the same as the external condom. Tear down, again, being really careful at this point not to be opening it with our teeth or potentially damaging the condom with any nails. Once that female condom is taken out, or the internal condom is taken out, in that picture you can see those 2 rings that I explained earlier. So inside is a harder type ring that is squeezed together and then inserted into the vagina, which we'll see in the next photo, the same way that you would insert a tampon into a vagina. That ring at the bottom is the outer ring that stays on the outside of the vagina. One of the benefits of a female condom is that because of that outer ring, some people have reported an increase in sexual pleasure. They say that that ring can rub onto the clitoris and can help with stimulation. It's also providing a greater surface area protection. So it's protecting a little bit more of that genital area, therefore reducing the chances of a skin-to-skin viral infection like genital herpes or genital warts. What's the maximum time that we would say you could leave a female condom in place before use? Probably 6 to 12 hours. It's sort of very similar to a tampon. You don't want anything in your vaginal area for longer than a 12-hour period, just due to the increased risk of things like toxic shock syndrome and infection. Jen's replied 8 hours. There you go. Thanks, Jen. So squeezing that inner ring and then inserting it into the vagina the same way that a tampon would be inserted. It is a little bit harder to demonstrate when we have the cube. It is a much easier process in real life. And once you've had a few goes at it, most people can master doing it with just 1 finger, the same that they would with a tampon. In the video demonstration there, you can see that it's actually going in with a few fingers. It's one of those things where practice makes perfect. So again, it's quite acceptable to say to your clients, why not practice while masturbating or practicing whilst using toys, so that then when it comes to using it with a partner, you have a little bit more idea about how to use it correctly, how to get it into position, and knowing how it feels comfortable. The outer ring will sit on the outside of the vagina, as you can see there. We just need to make sure that it is not twisted. That inner ring cups the cervix much the same way that a diaphragm cups the cervix. So it should comfortably sit into place. Some people ask us whether or not that will fall out during sex, and the basic answer is no. We need to remember that the vagina is a muscle, and so therefore it does contract. So similarly to the fact that most tampons don't just fall out, the female condom isn't going to fall out either. We do, however, need to make sure that once a penis or toy is being inserted, that it does go through the middle of that outer ring. We don't want it to slip up the side between the condom and the vaginal wall. So we need to be making sure that the penis or toy is being directed and goes through the center. The same way that we say don't double up with external condoms, you don't want that additional friction, the same occurs here. So if an internal condom is in place, don't use an external condom as well. You just need one or the other. Once sex has occurred and it needs to be removed, you simply twist it and give it a very gentle pull down, and it will come out very easily, the same way a tampon comes out when you pull down on those strings. As with the external condom, once it's been used, we just want to make sure that we're disposing of it thoughtfully. So wrapping it back up in the wrapper that it came in, or wrapping it in a tissue and then placing it into the bin. The third and final method of barrier or protection is what we call the dental dam. So the dental dam is a thin sheet of latex rubber that is quite often still used by dentists to stop blood-to-blood contact and splash. But these have also made their way into the sexual realm and is used to create a barrier from skin to skin, and it's placed across the genitals or the anus when performing oral sex. So it is literally just placed over the genitals or the anus, and it provides a barrier between somebody's mouth and private areas when those acts are happening. Again, that skin to skin contact, it's more around viruses such as genital warts and genital herpes, and that's what that is used for. Dental dams, you will find them in some pharmacists. They're not as easily accessible as an external condom. What you can do though, if you don't have access to a dental dam, is get an external condom, cut the tip off it, and then cut down the side, and then you'll still get a nice little sheet of latex to be able to use. Those of you who have clients who may identify as same-sex attracted, particularly females, this would be a useful sexual health resource to be able to provide them with. So thank you for that. I hope that has helped in demonstrating the correct use of those protection/barrier methods. I'm now going to hand back to Maddie for, I believe, another case study.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gnomes. There's lots of claps happening that I can see on the video. I love hearing Caitlin talk about contraception and Naomi talk about barrier methods. Love their knowledge. So we're up to our second, stop sharing results, story. And I'm just going to make the poll live so you can actually see it as I'm speaking. Multitasking, how's that? So Ari's story. Ari has recently become sexually active. Ari has received plenty of information about sexual health, avoiding unplanned pregnancies and STIs. Ari's experience of the healthcare system makes Ari a little reluctant to engage with health professionals, and I'm sure you've all heard that before. Ari avoids visits to the doctor and is uncomfortable with injections and other medical procedures. Ari is responsible but a little forgetful. So I think the poll is live now. If I could get a thumbs up from a few people that you can see it. Go for however many options you would like to provide. So I think take some time to think about what contraception methods you would recommend to Ari. Again, we have a couple of questions we can ask our friend Ari. I'm just going to open up the chat.
Sorry, I think we can only select one.
Oh, is there? Okay, yeah. I was wondering why the Implanon was the most popular. Maybe type in the chat, in the group chat, any other options that you would provide. So a couple of questions that I have for Ari is where is Ari getting their sexual health information from? Is it a reliable source? Maybe it's from their peers, we don't know. In the chat box, if you also want to put in there where you would recommend Ari to receive some trustworthy websites for Ari to access. I would personally, and I'll mention it again, is recommend obviously Family Planning New South Wales website, but also the Play Safe Nurse Nettie function, where it's a really trustworthy place to go. And Ari, who I'm going to make the assumption is a young person, might want to feel a little bit more comfortable asking those questions electronically rather than in a face-to-face consultation with a GP. Young people, as we know, have very different experiences of GPs, and it's all about choice. So we could suggest some youth-friendly GPs where ARI might have a better experience to empower them to make their own sexual and reproductive health choice. I can see a couple of comments coming through here. Yep, headspace is a really great point. I would also say, you know, to ARI, carry multiple condoms with you at all times. We know that ARI is responsible, so that could be something that they could do. So I'm going to end this poll. Wasn't as successful as the last one on my end, and I'll share the results, but also have a look at what was happening in the chat box too with some people's responses. So I hope these case studies or stories have been helpful for you, and especially when you're thinking about yourself or someone you know or a client that you work with, people that you work with. You might want to be putting together, and exactly right, we don't know ARI's gender identity either, so that's a really good question. So you might want to put some case studies similar to this together. If you're going to practice your own sexual health education sessions, it might be a really good way to just start to think about who you're working with and how we can put these case studies together. So might need a little bit of a brainstorm for that one. Okay, so we've been talking about the contraceptive kit today, and I'm just going to wrap up today with a whole heap of great websites and resources that you can check out over the next couple of slides. So again, I want to thank Caitlin and Naomi for their great knowledge around contraception, both hormonal and non-hormonal or barrier methods protection. So the contraceptive kit that you can see on the screen now, you can access from the Family Planning New South Wales website, and you can buy that for $290, and it's well worth it. There's great resources in there. Everything that we've talked about today is in that kit. Family Planning also have a great resource called Yarning About Our Bodies, and it's an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander specific resource, and it provides messages around contraception, sexually transmissible infections, cervical screening, safe sex and condom use, and that's about $20. So also found on the website. So that might be something that you would be interested in checking out as well. So I'm just going to kind of finish with a bit of a discussion around access, particularly when we're talking about the ever-evolving landscape that we're in COVID-19 times, and how do we access contraception moving forward. So I've got a couple of check boxes on the screen there. We're well aware that telehealth is being more and more common to be used in these times, and it's an option to access contraception. Medicare, the reason I've got that on the screen there is because from the age of 14, only you can see your Medicare claims history. And we know that that's a question that a lot of young people have concerns about their parents or other people having access to their Medicare claims history. So it's actually from the age of 14. And so no one else would be able to see your Medicare claims history without your consent. So I think that's an important note to make. If you're ever unsure about a client when we're talking about age and certain situations, you can always contact the New South Wales Health Child Wellbeing Unit, and their number, I think Jen will put it in the chat box, but is 1300 480 420. And I'm just seeing there's somebody else in here. Yep, great. So that's a place that you can access for assistance in determining the level of risk of harm, planning next steps, responding to the needs of vulnerable children, young people, pregnant women and families. So hopefully you would never have to use that number, but they're great if you just need to kind of debrief even about a certain client or situation that you've been involved in. Health Pathways is up on the screen there, so you can access contraception information and services through that way. There's also some online delivery options to access contraception, such as kin fertility. So I've got a little bit of a story about a young person's experience accessing contraception through kin fertility, which I've just dropped. Hang on a second. So I'm just going to read that out now. So I'm a young person. I have no pre-existing health conditions. I have been on the same brand of the pill for years. I work full time, and that makes it really hard for me to access doctor's appointments. I completed a survey on the kin fertility website and was asked actually more questions about my family history than my GP has ever asked me. I got my blood pressure checked at a chemist in my lunch break, and I added that onto the survey. I was able to ask questions via email with a GP in Sydney, which kind of gives me a little bit of confidence. And then the pill was delivered to my door in a discreet package with 8 months worth of the same brand of pill that I'm used to. So that's just one story of an experience of a service like kin fertility, and I'm sure there's many others out there. So it's really great to see what's happening and where we're moving forward to. So just the last couple of slides here are around places where you can go to access more information. I've mentioned PlaySafe Nurse Nettie. PlaySafe is a sex-positive New South Wales government website aimed at young people aged 16 to 29 for everything you need to know about to have a confident, healthy sex life. The Sexual Health Info link, again, the number's up on the screen. It's a secure phone line where you can talk to a sexual health nurse. And I think Jen's added in the comments in the chat box as well, but you can actually access 144 free condoms per month for your service through the PlaySafe Pro website. And here they are here. So if you needed to put together, it's a bit blurry, you needed to put together a pack of condoms or do your own little giveaway packs or have them in your service in your office, that's a really good way of getting access to condoms. Family planning, we've got some representatives of family planning on the chat, so thanks so much for joining us. They're an independent, not-for-profit organisation and a leading provider in terms of reproductive and sexual health services. So that's where you go to access all the contraception we've talked about today. Marie Stopes, they're an independently accredited safe abortion and vasectomy and contraception provider, helping people take full control of their reproductive lives. And contraceptive.org.au is a fab interactive website, and it's one of my favourites, and it's a place that you can go to, and I think young people would really enjoy it as well, to get some go through some myth busting, some misconceptions around birth control, and you can actually do a quiz to find the best contraceptive fit for you. And that's what we were talking about around making your choice based on your lifestyle. And then this is my final slide. As I say, thank you to you all for joining, but this is our website. This is our landing page. I'm scrolling through here without my hands. Look at how clever I am. And you've got on there what the latest, we've got our blog up on there. I'm scrolling down, you can see some images, and I'm about to get to the condom dispensers. So in the Illawarra Shoalhaven, we have this map on our website that has where all of the condom dispensers are in the Illawarra Shoalhaven, and you can click on those dots and the directions will come up on the left-hand side. So it's a really great place if you're talking to young people about where to access free condoms and you don't have your 144 PlaySafe branded condom bag yet. So this is our landing page. The link will be in the chat box. We also have a few other things on our landing page, which I'm sure is about to get to in a minute. I'm just scrolling through so you get the process. Other stuff that you can get on our landing page is stuff that you might like. Things like Unpack the Kit. I'm not sure if anyone on this webinar was on our Unpack the Kit webinar, but it's a sexual health and healthy relationships resource, and it was originally created for international students, but it is broadly to anybody. If you're wanting to go back to that webinar, that's the YouTube link at the bottom of this page, and you can go back and listen to us talk about the kit there. You can see our annual training calendar, which is how you came here today. Those are the links there on the screen. I've clicked on PlaySafe Pro because there you can see the free condoms, there's training, games that you can use in your own planning when you're talking about sexual health education sessions. And there we go, there's the free resource order form, which is for us here in the Illawarra, but there you go, you click on that button there and you put in some details into that form to access your free 144 condoms. What else am I going to show you in this? I think I might go to the blog next, hands-free. So we actually post a blog every 2 weeks on our landing page. These are just some of the blogs that we've had recently. Check them out. They're not very long. Naomi is our fantastic blog writer. We've had a guest blog for the last month, which was Caitlin around contraception. So you might find some more tips and things that we like that we think you might like too in that blog. And another exciting thing is we've added Google Translate, and we know that Google Translate isn't perfect, but it's a great place to start. I don't speak Arabic, so I'm not sure, I don't read Arabic, so I'm not sure whether that is accurate, but it's Google Translate. It's very commonly used on a lot of websites. So hopefully as it gets used more and more, the accuracy will increase. So this is our landing page, and I think I might pause it here and finish with a great big thank you to everybody who has joined us today. Thank you to my colleagues standing with me, and to Jen, who's in the other room monitoring the chat. It's been really great to come together again, and I can see a few faces and a few smiles, so it's thanks so much. And in the chat box, thanks Jen, is our super quick, I promise I made it like 2 questions survey about your experience today. So I'd love for you, and I can see someone's done it already, so quick, thank you. I'd love to be able to get some feedback from you guys so that we can make this webinar experience the best that we can in the future. So thanks so much. We'll see how we go getting this recording up in the next couple of weeks on YouTube, and we'll let you guys know via email. And I'll see you on our social media, of course, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. What else can I plug? I don't know. Thanks so much, guys.